ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय Ramakrishnaय te namaha. Namaskar to all of you. Welcome to the study of the great Master Sri Ramakrishna, written by Shardanandaji Maharaj. From what we have said before and now about the nature of Sri Ramakrishna's mind, one can understand that such a mind could not remain idle even in the normal state of consciousness, for it could not feel satisfied till it had studied the nature and behavior of those things and persons it came in contact with and arrived at reliable conclusions about them. In his boyhood, he discerned that the learned scholars studied the scriptures for the purpose of earning money alone, and which led him to refrain from learning the art that taught him the bundling of rice and plantain, or the bread-winning education. Only for the goal is money and sense gratification and greed, lust and greed. That's why he used to always tell the whole world, the whole universe, if you simplify it, just like in algebraic equations, if you simplify, it boils down to the value of x and y. Like that, the whole world, external world and the internal world, if you boil it down, if you simplify it, it will come down to lust and gold only. So Ramakrishna used to tell, as a child, I don't want that art of bundling of rice and plantain. After studying so much higher things like Veda and Vedanta, such wonderful flights of superconscious things, then your mind is only on money, greed, and sense gratification. So he he would tell that in his boyhood he discerned that the learned scholars, the great people who have got so much of education, studied all these scriptures for the purpose of earning money and money alone, which led him to refrain from learning such kind of art that taught him the bundling of rice and plantain, as he derisively called it. And as he advanced in age, his mind came in contact with various people in various places and arrived at various conclusions about them. These conclusions will be the subject of our discussion now. Now, we told about yesterday about the vulture society. So the vultures soar very high, so high, but all their sight will be on the rotten carrion or dead body. They will be searching for dead body on the ground. Likewise, people, they study so much, they learn so much, instead with the idea of helping humanity, serving all the people, doing benefit to the nature, environment. We are harming the environment We are in a war footing, killing all the animals, spreading plastic and all the things into the sea. The fishes and other creatures in the sea are dying and having so much of pain. We are just using the whole nature for our consumerism and our greed. Everywhere we are putting in pesticides, poisoning the whole atmosphere. And not only we are being troubled or getting into a lot of peculiar diseases, incurable diseases, causing problem to ourselves, but causing problem to all the other animals and plants. So what is the cause of all these things? Education. So much of science and technology, so much of research and investigation. So after getting all that, if you don't use it for higher purpose, you can see what is happening. I remember Swami Vivekananda telling, there is, when somebody asks the question, what is the difference between God and Satan or Mammon? God and Satan. What is the difference between God and Satan? Swami Vivekananda tells there is no much difference, only two differences are there. But in all the other cases, they are equal. How? What are the equality? In power, they are the equal because there is the same God who is present in Satan too. So, in knowledge, yes, it is the same in both God and Satan too. Power, same thing. But what is the difference? The difference between God and Satan is one thing, purity. God is pure. God has that purity. But Satan is impure. That is the first important difference. Secondly, what is the other difference? God is unselfishness personified, and Satan is selfishness personified. So these are the two differences, selfish, purity, and impurity. So it makes him a Satan because they're equal in all the ways. The Satan becomes a Satan because of impurity of mind and selfishness. God becomes, all the human beings or any creature becomes God because of unselfishness and purity. So this is the only two difference. Yes, nowadays you can see we human beings, we are getting lots and lots of knowledge in the form of education, present day education. And we are getting lots and lot of power, energy, power, both knowledge and power. So much of power, so much of knowledge. But because we are not giving our children or ourselves that important character which makes a human being a god, that is unselfishness and purity, we are also, all of us, with so much of education, with so much of knowledge, we are becoming Satan. So that is the word used by Swami Vivekananda is the asuras, asuri sampat, the demoniacal qualities. So simultaneously with education, collection of information, knowledge, and so much of power we are getting, if we don't give our children the purity and unselfishness which will make them gods, then if you don't give these two important things, then they will definitely become Satans or demoniacal. And you can see how the whole nature, with all the science and technology, all our Indian rishis, munis had gained all these technologies, science earlier. During the Ravana's period, there was a Pushpaka Vimana. They used to fly. And while Rama was coming back from Pushpaka Vimana, Valmiki Maharshi gives the aerial view, how were the mountains looking from such a height, how were the exact things looking from above, and while traveling, what was the time consumed from Sri Lanka to Ayodhya, 21 days, and all those things are corroborating to the present day with all that latitude and longitude. How could our rishis knows all those things? So much of technology, alchemistry, converting every baser metal into gold. It was known to our rishis, munis. Not only these things, so much of metallurgy, so much of engineering technology, which you can see. Go to the temples of India, where you can see thousands and thousands of years back the carved temple that couldn't have been done without lathing and other things. They are so soft, they are so wonderfully carved, so perfect, symmetrical, geometrical. So without mathematics and geometry, how could I have done that? Thousands and thousands of years back. And some of the caves which were built by the kings, the Rashtrakutas, and the rulers of Karnataka, which are found in Ellora and Ajanta. They are the rock cut caves and temples. There was just a huge monolith stone, granite stone, that has been carved from the top, going down, making so many temples, beautiful varieties of temples, temple of Shiva, there in Ajanta and Ellora and all those places. So the whole mountain was carved into temples so perfectly that too within a short time. So without any technology of the present day, they could do that. How could they do? Nowadays, the scientists are so much worried. How could they do? These people do. So they are telling, oh, some aliens came from some other places and they have done it. So the aliens have come and done it. So what can they do otherwise? Just like the doctors tell, if they can't diagnose what is the disease, they will just tell allergy. That's all. So something like that. But our rishis and munis had all this science and technology, but they didn't make this wanton disturbance of the nature, exploited the nature. They never exploited it. They lived with the nature harmoniously, and they taught all their children to do that. And so, even though our civilization dates back to 50,000, 60,000 years, yet there was not even one trace of disturbance of the universe or the mother earth or any other parts of the nature. And now the present day technology, which has been developed only within a span of 70 or 80 years, you can see so much of disturbance to the globe, to the seas, to the outer atmosphere, the space also, so much of debris of all the, what do you call, the rockets and the satellites, so much of debris. So we are polluting not only our mother earth, but also the external space too. And how is this happening? Only the development of science and technology we see from the 70 or 50 years back. But our rishis and munis had all these wonderful technology, and they lived happily. They had so much of things to be joyful, but they never touched or disturbed the nature in any way. They lived in harmony. They were so happy. They taught that to the children too. So you can see the difference between the civilization and now whatever we are suffering. The coronavirus is also man-made, you should know. So we have done it out of greed, out of marketing. They want to increase their market. So now when all are suffering, some of the countries are exploiting those countries with medicines and other things when they are suffering. You create it, you create the disease, and then give the medicines too. What a wonderful science, you can see what wonderful education we are getting. And this is the outcome of all our higher education. Can't you see? That's why Ramakrishna could see all those things, the things of the education, even then, the Western education and all the other education. And he decided, I don't want such education whereby we get only greed and lust, but I want that education by which I can realize the truth. So you can see this aspect in Sri Ramakrishna even from his childhood. As he advanced in age, his mind came in contact with various people in various places and arrived at various conclusions about them. Those conclusions will be subject of our discussion now. It is superfluous to say that the ill will between the followers of Shakti, they are called Shaktas, and the followers of Vishnu, who are called Vaishnavas in Bengal. So it is superfluous to say that the ill will, the jealousy, the competition between the Shaktas and Vaishnavas of Bengal, which came into existence at the time of passing away of Sri Chaitanya, continued unabated, although a few rare sadhakas like Ramaprasad, who had realized God with the help of their sadhana, the oneness of Divine Mother, Shakti, Kali, and Krishna, and they preached that the ill will was wrong and uncalled for. It is clear from the censorious gloating which accompanied the mutual condemnation of the deities on both the sides, that the generality of the people, instead of paying heed to the words of the wisdom of the realized souls, have allowed themselves to be carried away by the hatred of the unrealized people, whose aim is selfishness and gain. It is needless to say that Sri Ramakrishna was acquainted with the fact from his childhood, again applying himself to the disciplines prescribed in the scriptures of both the sects, Shakta, followers of Shakti, Divine Mother, and Vaishnavas, the followers of Vishnu, and attaining to perfection in both. He realized both the paths to be equally true, will take you to the same God. The goal is only one God. But here, because of our tastes and our stages of evolution, different paths are given, different means are given, that's all. So Sri Ramakrishna clearly understood that the cause of the mutual hatred between the followers of different cults, Shaktas and the Vaishnavas, was only the vanity and the egotism born of lack of spirituality. It was only in the external differences. So why was this hatred? So Sri Ramakrishna discerned the truth. He then clearly understood that the cause of the mutual hatred between any groups of religious people are because of, now Shardanandaji Maharaj is giving the example in India, the difference between the Shaktas worshippers of Divine Mother and Vaishnavas of Vishnu, followers of Vishnu, was not that the gods were different, not that they were leading them to God, both were equally great. Then what was the cause? It was the vanity of the followers. It was the egotism of few of the people. Why did they get this vanity and egotism? Born of lack of spirituality. They would not develop spirituality, they will not go towards God, but use that religion for their selfish purpose to gain political power, to gain money, to gain something for their self gratification. So that was the cause of all these differences and fight between the people. They would instigate people. For example, I always give this example. The British used to do that, divide and rule. So they used to create fissures between the people, between the religion, between the language, between North India, South India, between everything, they whatever was possible, they created division so that they will fight against each other and they could rule. We have heard from our childhood the story. So there was very good eatable which the two cats were fighting for. Both the cats were fighting each other. I want more share of that pie or whatever eatable. And the other cat was fighting, it wants the more share. While they were fighting, the monkey came in. The monkey told, I will be the judge and I will help you to share. Then the cats were satisfied. The it asked the cat to divide it. They divided it. Then the monkey told, see this portion of you, one of the cat is more. So I will cut it into equal part. He cut a little out of it and ate that good eatable. Then again he told, see this has become a little more now because of the more cutting there. And he took a little from there and ate it. Like that it went on eating and finally completed the whole thing and told both of them got nothing. So the cats had to go without any food. Likewise, we have learned that story from our childhood. The British and even now many of the companies, the pharmaceutical companies and so many other companies, the what you call multinational companies are simply exploiting people in their greed. Credit card company, debit card company, they know their weakness. So it was there in the genes of the Indians to save money. So there was no need of bank. They used to save so much, the mothers in the house. Now all the companies have come with the credit card and the debit card. They will all empty their savings or the earnings even before the month end. And there is no money everywhere. They have loan or debt on the house, on the vehicle, on everything. And if there is even the smallest of mishap, then they have to sell their property and they become paupers. So you can see what is education doing, what is happening, what is all the cause. It is the vanity, the egotism, the greed, which is been now built up in the form of in the name of education. What are the management people teaching? How to exploit people? What is all about management? How can you make more money? How can you squeeze more money from the people? How can you dupe the people? So wonderfully, the companies which give you loan, they will not tell about the taxes. They will tell, oh, that is free, this is free. But behind that, in the small letters, it will be conditions apply, preconditions apply in a small letter. People will not read that. They will put the signature and get trapped. So what is all due to our higher education, MBA? So they are all highly educated, degrees, master degrees, and other things in economics. So what is all that showing? Only how to dupe the people, how to fleece the people. So Ramakrishna could discern that from the childhood. He could see what is happening behind the scene. So now about the division in the religion, fighting in the name of God, he's seeing that was only due to the selfishness, power, hunger for the power, the vanity and egotism born of lack of spirituality. If you really want to realize God, if you get love of God, if you develop spirituality, then there'll be no fight at all. So know for certain, now by the experience of Sri Ramakrishna, that if somebody, some people are fighting in the name of God, in the name of religion, then that is purely political power hunger, and it is purely selfishness and greed. And it is not the mistake of the religion. It is not the mistake of the God. It is only the mistake of the followers who have this selfishness. The master's father, a worshipper of Sri Ramachandra, providentially got the stone emblem called Raghuvira. of Ramachandra and installed it in his house. Although Sri Ramakrishna was thus born in a Vaishnava family, the followers of Vishnu, it was evident that from childhood he had equal love towards both Shiva and Vishnu. His neighbors say even now that he dressed himself as Shiva at one time during his childhood and remained in ecstasy for a few hours in that mood. And they show the particular spot even now where that event on Shivaratri took place as a proof of this fact. Another event may be mentioned here. At one time, Sri Ramakrishna had every one of his household initiated in the mantra of both Vishnu and Shakti. The master, we infer, acted in this manner only to remove the hatred from their minds. It is now well known that Ashoka, one of the emperor of North India, Ashoka, the man of Dharma, made up his mind to spread religion and learning for the good of humanity. He established hospitals for men and animals and various places of India for the treatment of their physical ailments, and he made medicinal plants, creepers, and herbs easily available to the public by having them cultivated and collected. Moreover, through the Buddhist monks, he sent medicines and medicinal herbs to foreign countries too and made them available there. It is perhaps from that time that sadhus began to collect and preserve medicines. Again, that custom became more prevalent during the tantric age when the tantras and other things developed after the Buddhistic age. The sadhus were collecting medicines and distributing it to people. Again, that custom became more prevalent during tantric age. Seeing the spiritual degradation of the sadhus, now instead of giving their mind to God, meditating on God, instead of using these herbs and serving the humanity with that medicine, seeing God in them, there was degradation at that time in the sadhus, and they started using this to become more popular and cure diseases, get medicines, and become popular. Spirituality declined, and name and fame, desire for name and fame, selfishness increased. It is perhaps from that time, after Ashoka, the sadhus began to collect and preserve medicines. Again, that custom became more prevalent during the Tantric age. Now, seeing the spiritual degradation of the sadhus on account of that custom, the authors of the Smritis in the following age raised a great objection against it. But that custom has not died even now in the conservative India. During his stay at Dakshineshwar and travels to holy places, Sri Ramakrishna saw many monks falling a prey to worldliness by developing attraction for such alien interest like curing diseases, giving medicines, or creating miracles. So now, after watching all these things, discerning, learning, doing research about this, what did the master Sri Ramakrishna come to the conclusion? When the monks during his stay at Dakshineshwar and travels to holy places, the master saw that many monks falling a prey to worldliness by developing attraction for such alien interests like curing diseases and performing miracles. Thus, Sri Ramakrishna was convinced of the lack of spirituality, which is very, very important. Spirituality is important among sadhus. If you give up that and go for these things, then naturally there will be degradation, there will be decline in spirituality. So Sri Ramakrishna was convinced of the lack of spirituality amongst the monks too. For he said to us, Sri Ramakrishna used to tell all these direct disciples, to us, here is Shardanandaji, Vivekanandaji, and all the other direct disciples, and the householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna too. Thus, Sri Ramakrishna was convinced of the lack of spirituality amongst the monks too. For he said to us time and again, what is that? Never believe sadhus who prescribe and administer medicine, who practice exorcism. Never believe sadhu who prescribe and administer medicines and miracles and who practice exorcism. So, this was the conclusion of Sri Ramakrishna after watching the decline of spirituality and increase in such exorcism, giving medicine and curing diseases, and miracle performance where it lacked spirituality. Because you don't have spirituality, you want to attract other people, you want to get name and fame, you want to get worldly advantages. So you can't get it from spirituality. So naturally, they will take up these things, telling astrology, the sadhus now telling about the future and the past and other things. So all those things came up. They gave up spirituality. So Sri Ramakrishna's perfect intellect was convinced of the lack of spirituality amongst the monks too. For he said to us time and again, never believe sadhus who prescribe and administer medicine, who practice exorcism, and who practice miracles because they are lacking spirituality. Because of the lack of spirituality, these things are practiced to attract people. Now, there was a church, and that church, naturally, everywhere the number of the visitors, the devotees are declining, the non believers are increasing. Atheism is rampant everywhere. Non believers, after the education they get, they lose their faith in God because the Semitic religions treat them, God, as sitting with a scepter to punish. So he's always seen as a fearful God, a punishing God. This is the way the Semitical religions give the picture of God to the people. But God is so kind, merciful, but this picture is given. He's ready to always with the scepter to punish us. So most of the people in the Western world are giving up love for God and they're becoming atheists, and church goers are declining. Most of the European countries we have seen, they're selling all their big churches to other religions. Everywhere the churches are sold because no goers at all, no people there. Now, one pastor there, the father who was looking after that church, was very worried. He started devising so many plans. How can we increase the number? How can we attract? So he started introducing so many new things, so many new tricks by which people can be attracted. Decorations. Then he started introducing pop music, rock music in the church, singing, choir. Then he started introducing dance, that, and these so many things to attract. So young girls and boys, cheerleaders were brought to the church so that in that way, at least the youths and the people will be attracted and come to the church. So he tried and tried and tried and tried so many new ways, but numbers were dwindling and it was not increasing at all. So the father, the pastor, he now was very much worried. There was an old devotee who used to come to the church. Then he went and consulted him. What is this? Whatever I do, I tried so many means, so many new ways to attract people, and it is not helping at all. What shall I do? Then that old devotee of the church told father, Father, pastor, why don't you try religion? Why don't you try spirituality or religion? So we try to attract people by devising all the other plans except spirituality and religion, God and religion. So why don't you try religion? So that is what is very important in spirituality. religion, dharma. So we have to always use that. All the other things are useless. That's why Sri Ramakrishna was convinced of the lack of spirituality amongst the monks too. For he said to us time and again, never believe sadhus who prescribe and administer medicines, who prescribe or administer or practice exorcism, who prescribe and they show off the miracles. Never believe such sadhus. And also who receive money and who adorn their bodies with the outward marks of religion, such as tilakas put on, only wooden sandals, etc. Much of this is done only rather exclusively to pose themselves as big sadhus. The marks serve them as their signboards. So if you have spirituality, real spirituality, love for God, automatically people will come, true sadhakas will come. All the other things, the show off of religion is only to attract people. It is only for selfishness because of the lack of spirituality. Now, let no one think from what has been said that seeing the hypocritical and fallen monks, Sri Ramakrishna, like some of the westernized people, wanted monastic communities to be, some of the westernized people wanted these monastic communities to be abolished. But you should not think that Sri Ramakrishna is prescribing that. For we heard Sri Ramakrishna say on this subject from time to time, even an ordinary monk, even an ordinary monk in religious garb, living on alms bhiksha, must be regarded as higher in comparison with a good householder. For though he does not practice yoga or other religious exercises, if he possesses a good character and lives his whole life on bhiksha, he has in this life gone much farther ahead on the path of renunciation than an ordinary householder. The aforesaid words of the Master are amongst the many instances illustrating the fact that to him renunciation of everything for the sake of God was the measure of man's conduct and character. Again, I will go through that for the clarity of your thought. So, by telling that never believe the sadhus who prescribe medicines and practice exorcism, tell your future, and other showing the outer signs of religion, wearing big marks on their body, and who receive money for all these things, who receive money for medicines and exorcism and showing of miracles, and who adorn their bodies with outward marks of religion, put on wooden sandals, etc., etc. Much of this is done only rather excessively to pose themselves as big sadhus and attract people. The marks serve them as their signboard. So, when you don't have spirituality, you do all those things. The moment you have love of God and renunciation, you don't worry about all these things at all. So, when Sri Ramakrishna is telling all these things, Shardanandaji is very particular to show us or tell us, let no one think from what has been said that seeing the hypocritical and fallen monks, the master told these things, but it was not told about the generality, the good monks. Everywhere there will be such people. If there is a apple, real apple, there will be imitation apple too. So Ramakrishna was not telling these. Shardanandaji is insisting, like some of the westernized people wanted monastic communities to be abolished. For we heard Sri Ramakrishna say on this subject from time to time. And what did he tell? Note this also, it's very important. Even an ordinary monk, even an ordinary monk in religious garb, living on alms bhiksha, must be regarded as higher in comparison with a good householder. Even an ordinary monk in religious garb, living on alms bhiksha, must be regarded as higher in comparison with the good householder. For though he does not practice yoga or other religious exercises, if he possesses a good character and lives his whole life on bhiksha, he has in this life gone much farther ahead on the path of renunciation than an ordinary householder. The aforesaid words of Sri Ramakrishna are amongst the many instances illustrating the fact that to him renunciation of everything for the sake of God was the measure of man's conduct and character. So, again, the conclusion is very, very important. The aforesaid words of Sri Ramakrishna are amongst the many instances illustrating the words of Sri Ramakrishna are amongst the many instances of illustrating the fact that to him, to Ramakrishna, renunciation of everything for the sake of God, renunciation of everything for the sake of God was the measure of man's conduct. Renunciation of everything for the sake of God was the measure of man's conduct and character. We have already given many examples of the fact that austere and devoted sadhus, irrespective of their community, whether they followed the path of devotion or whether they followed the path of knowledge, Gnana Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, were much honored by Sri Ramakrishna. The lamp of Sanatana Dharma, the lamp of Hindu Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion of India, has been kept burning only by the realization of these great souls. Otherwise, it would have been already lost by this time. So again, we have to note that Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling we have already given many examples of the fact that austere and devoted sadhus, irrespective of their community, whether they followed the path of devotion or knowledge, were much honored by Sri Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna respected them. The lamp of Hindu Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion of India, has been kept burning by the realization of these great souls. It is those among them who have realized God and freed themselves from the bondage of Maya that have demonstrated and thereby maintained the authority of the Vedas and other scriptures as the repository of spiritual truths. All philosophers of this country, including rationalists like the Vaisheshikas, have unanimously said that the Vedas are revealed only to the Aptas. Who are the Aptas? Those who have attained the truth, who have realized God, the mantra drashtaras. It was therefore no wonder that Sri Ramakrishna, possessed of a profound inner vision, could know the fact and honored them accordingly. Although Sri Ramakrishna viewed the sincere and austere sadhus with great favor and respect and always enjoyed their company greatly, he invariably found in them lack of one thing, which pained him much on several occasions. What is that? He invariably found in them lack of one thing, which pained him much on several occasions. He saw that they could not mix alike with all communities with equal love, though it was so easy for him to do so. He noticed their narrowness even amongst the advanced aspirants. The sannyasins treading the path of non-duality, monistic Advaita, not to speak of those traveling on the path of devotion, even long before attaining the liberal sameness of non-dual plane, they learn uniformly to scorn, to criticize, to scorn at people going on all other paths as inferior in spiritual fitness. So Ramakrishna would not like this aspect whereby the monks, even though They have gone too forward in spiritual life. They have advanced a lot, but he was very pained on the occasion because he found invariably found in them lack of one thing. What was that? He saw that these great spiritual luminaries could not mix alike with all communities with equal love, though it was so easy for them to do so. He noticed their narrowness even amongst the advanced aspirants and the sannyasins treading the path of non-duality, not to speak of those traveling on the path of devotion. Even long before attaining the liberal sameness, even long before attaining the liberal sameness of the non-dual plane, they learn uniformly to scorn, to criticize, to degrade people going on all other paths other than them as inferior in spiritual fitness, or at best to view them with condescension. The liberal minded Sri Ramakrishna, the liberal minded master, it is needless to say, was much grieved to see that kind of mutual intolerance among people going forward to the same goal. And he clearly saw that the said illiberality or exclusiveness was produced by the lack of true spirituality. So Ramakrishna couldn't digest this idea of illiberality and criticism of all other paths. So he used to tell that example. What is that example? People always claim that their own clock, wristwatch, or whatever clock in the house is showing the right time. All the other clocks in other houses or on the wristwatch of other people are showing the wrong time. Only the clock which is in my wrist or my house is showing the right time, even though it may be connected digitally, even though it may be showing the universal time. Even then, you can see the people telling, my own clock shows the right time. And some people also claim that about the newspaper and the TV. So many things will happen, so many events are happening, but they will have faith or believe it only if they read in the newspaper. Without the newspaper putting that, they don't believe. A person is telling, okay, this apart from Ramakrishna's, this thing Ramakrishna has told up till then, they don't believe if it is not published in some of the newspaper. So at that time, this TV and other things had not come up. Only newspapers were there. So Ramakrishna is giving the examples of newspaper and the clock. So only my time is the right time. And only I believe if it is published in the newspaper. And this is our extra added thing to that. So they also go forward. Suppose an event has taken place, you have seen it. An event has taken place in your neighborhood and you see it and you go and report it to such a person that this has happened. Told, I don't believe it. No, you can come and see it is happened here in your neighborhood. No, I don't believe it. Why? Because it is not given in my newspaper. Then okay, that person goes and tells the newspaper wallahs and makes them print that and brings a copy and shows, see, now at least will you believe? No, I will not believe. Why? It is not printed in the newspaper which I get to my house, in my house, which I prescribe to. So these are the things by which we become illiberal. We become so narrow. We become bigoted in the name of God, in the name of religion. How can that happen? That's why Sri Ramakrishna used to always prescribe devotion to God based on harmoniously mixed with knowledge of God. So when you have vast knowledge of God, that is Gnana Marga, Advaita Marga, which is so liberal, then you will become very liberal. And you will also get that idea of harmoniously living with all other sects, all other people, follow all the paths. Now, the exclusiveness, the illiberality, Ramakrishna used to tell the mutual intolerance among people going forward to the same goal, that is one God. And he clearly saw that the said illiberality or exclusiveness or that bigotry, the fanaticism, was produced by the lack of true spirituality. If you love God, you are really going forward to God, then you can't have these things. When he was staying at Kali temple at Dakshineshwar, the master got daily proof of this exclusiveness and lack of spirituality amongst both classes of men, householders and monks. When he traveled to holy places and temples, he found that these evil were not less, but in fact more virulent there. The quarrel amongst the Brahmanas when they received gift from Mathur, the tantric sadhaka's improper conduct at Kashi due to excessive drinking after performing the Divine Mother's nominal worship, to witness which they had invited Sri Ramakrishna. The strenuous exertion for the name and fame of the Dandi sadhus, the Swamis carrying staffs as their insignia, and at Vrindavan, the Vaishnava Babas' lives spent in the company of women under the pretext of practicing sadhana. All these and many more were the facts that revealed themselves in their true colors to the keen insight of Sri Ramakrishna and helped him in understanding the actual state of the society and the country. A mere observation of these events could not, of course, have helped him very much in this respect. Had he not in himself the realization of very profound and non dual truth, as he had already realized that truth, the idea of ultimate aim of individual and social life was firmly fixed in Sri Ramakrishna's mind. It was, therefore, easy for him to sound and understand all things by testing them by that realization. And this study and experience of the daily events of individual and social life during his stays in the normal plane of consciousness helped him in ascertaining the value of all things affecting the life of man. He could, with certainty, ascertain thereby the goal to which true progress, civilization, morality, education, love of God, steadfast adherence to customs, yoga, karma, and other impelling forces were taking man or would lead him when they reach their fully developed state. Consider how could he have understood about the progress made by a sadhu if he had not the knowledge of what constituted true holiness? How could the very truthful master exhort people to unequivocally to go on pilgrimages and worship the images there if he had not known without doubt that spirituality had been consolidated, so to say, and deposited in holy places and in the images of deities? Or how could he understand that intolerance characteristic of all the various religion was wrong if he had not known the direction they were taking and the goal they would ultimately lead to? Our daily experience brings us across a plethora of sects, sadhus, pilgrimages, images of deities, etc., and the echoes of the tumultuous discussion of the claims of various religions and of the meanings of scriptural passages reach our ears. In the midst of these conflicting experiences, we sometimes think one doctrine to be right and sometimes another, tempted by our delight in wrangles and intellectual gymnastics. Again, trying to ascertain the goal of humanity by the study and the observance of the daily events of the work a day world. We sometimes take one thing to be the goal, sometimes another, and failing to arrive at any definite conclusion. We go on oscillating and vacillating, and as it happens, not unoften, turn then atheist ultimately and regard worldly enjoyments as the real goal of life. What help of any consequence do we derive from this kind of experience of ours? From such ever changing and never abiding conclusion of ours? It is certain that without the help of great souls or world teachers, our crude mind can never understand, even in 100 lives, what Sri Ramakrishna could detect and understand straight away by virtue of the aforesaid wonderful constitution and nature of his mind. We infer from every action and behavior of Sri Ramakrishna what a gulf of difference there is between his mind and our mind. Though as minds they may appear to be similar, both of the minds may look similar, though as minds they may appear to be similar. Devotional scriptures, therefore, have pointed out that the mind of an incarnation of God is made up of an altogether different material of pure sattva guna, stuff of luminosity and knowledge. Pure sattva guna is stuff of luminosity and knowledge, untouched by rajas and tamas. Observing thus from both the divine and ordinary plane of consciousness, Sri Ramakrishna came to have an intimate understanding of the present lack of spirituality in the country and prevailing intolerance among religions from the contacts he had with people at Dakshineshwar and during his visit to holy places. He dived deeper and found out that although all religious doctrines were equally true, and although they help men of virtuous nature to reach ultimately the same goal through various paths, and the previous teachers were either ignorant of this truth of unity of all religions in respect of their goal, or they intentionally brought about this division to increase the number of their followers. So they intentionally refrained from preaching that oneness, considering the place, time, and person to be unsuitable for such teaching. Moreover, it dawned on him that this attitude of his, free from the slightest touch of exclusiveness or hatred, was an entirely novel thing in the world. It originated with him and he was to give it to the world. That is the speciality as an incarnation, this time given to the universe, that is the oneness, or all the religions, all the paths will take you to the same goal. Important thing is your sincerity and your sadhana, your vyakulata, mumukshutva, intense desire to realize God is important than the path. So many of us have come to understand this most liberal doctrine, namely, all faiths are true. As many faiths, so many paths. So, jotomot totopot, all faiths are true. As many faiths, so many paths. Why? Because in every human being, it is one God who is present in the heart, the Antaryamin. So whatever path you may take, wherever you may go, you have to come back to that goal that is within your heart. So your path you follow may be wrong. It may not be so sophisticated. It may not have been developed very nicely, but your inner urge to realize God or the presence of God in your own heart will lead you to the right path and take you. Nothing to worry about it. Many of us have now come to understand that this most liberal doctrine, namely, all faiths are true, as many faiths, so many paths, which has charmed the world, first emanated from Sri Ramakrishna's mouth, because it was not a theoretical conclusion, but it was out of realization. That is the reason why Sri Ramakrishna too, after realization of God too, after getting the highest Advaitic knowledge and staying there 6 months in that state, he practiced all the different paths in Hinduism. Everything, every sect, every smallest sect, even the meanest of the sects he followed. And also he followed the concept of the Semitic religions and the external outer, other than Indian religions. And then he got the result. It took him to the same God. It took him to that Nirakara Nirguna Parabrahma, the highest, formless, attributeless, one God, one consciousness, Parabrahma Swarupa, Satchit Ananda. So that's why it was an experience. It was not a theoretical conclusion. So that was the first time this wonderful concept, the doctrine, liberal doctrine, namely, all faiths are true. As many faiths, so many paths. The doctrine which has charmed the whole world and is the only remedy for all the fighting which is happening in the name of religion and God, that can solve this wonderful liberal doctrine, can solve that, which has charmed the world. First emanated from the realization of Sri Ramakrishna, and it came out through his mouth. Some may raise an objection and say that at least a partial manifestation of that liberal principle was seen in some of the rishis and religious teachers of the past. But when one looks a little below the surface, it becomes clear to one that those teachers culled certain portions of each of those faiths with the help of their intelligence and then made an amalgam of what they regarded essential in them. Unlike other teachers of the past, Sri Ramakrishna excluded nothing from any faith. He practiced with equal enthusiasm, all of them in his own life. So this is very, very important. He practiced with equal enthusiasm all the religion, all the paths, all the sects, all the beliefs in his own life, reach the goal as indicated by those faiths and realize that profound truth. It is, however, not our intention here to discuss this subject in detail. The only point is that we want to tell the reader here is that we get the proof of the existence of Sri Ramakrishna's life of this liberal principle from his childhood. But until he returned from his visit to holy places, Sri Ramakrishna was not able to understand with certainty that it was he alone who had experienced that liberalism in the spiritual world, and that although the past seers, teachers, and incarnation of gods preached in society how to reach the goal through particular paths, none of them up till then had preached that the same goal could be reached through all the different paths. Although at the time of his sadhana, he made a wholehearted offering of all his desires at the lotus feet of Divine Mother and resolved to dwell forever in the plane of non-dual consciousness without ever returning to the realm of Maya. But the Divine Mother did not allow this to take place. Through inscrutable ways, she kept up his body from destruction. During the days, he was oblivious of it. So I think yesterday, there was a question in the live chat of the Google. Sorry, not Google, it was of the YouTube. That how could Sri Ramakrishna sustain his body sitting in one posture for 6 months or 6 years without taking food, without rest, only in thinking of God? Yes, see here. You can get the answer here. The Divine Mother, through inscrutable ways, she kept up his body from destruction. During the days, he was oblivious of his body. How did she do that? A sadhu came there at that time, and he could see the body of Sri Ramakrishna there sitting in meditation and deep samadhi, realizing that Parabrahma Swarupa. He could understand, he was expert in yoga. So he got the idea that the Divine Mother had to do so much of work through this body. So he stayed there all that time, the 6 months, and he was protecting that body. He used to bring food, the nutritious food, and force that into the mouth of Sri Ramakrishna. Then he used to go on tapping the head, the body, with a piece of wooden club, gradually getting that body consciousness. And he used to force feed Sri Ramakrishna like that and clean his body and take care of that body all the time. So somehow the Divine Mother, in her inscrutable ways, would bring some people there, and she took care of the body. So through the inscrutable ways, the Divine Mother kept up his body from destruction. During the day, she was oblivious of it. The Master knew that it was ordained so far. The one purpose, the purpose of removing intolerance and exclusiveness from the world as far as possible. And that is what you see Swami Vivekananda, the disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, in the Parliament of Religions in USA. He preached that truth, wonderful truth given by Sri Ramakrishna, and it became so popular. He was a cynosure. He was the center of all people there, and he became so popular. So, what was the purpose? Sri Ramakrishna was ordained. So, for the one purpose, what is that purpose? The purpose of removing intolerance. The purpose of Sri Ramakrishna's advent is removing intolerance and exclusiveness from the world of religion as far as possible. He knew, moreover, that the world too was thirsting. The world, because of the fights, the crusades, the infighting between the same religions, because all the Semitic religion have their one origin, the Old Testament. But they go on fighting crusades and conquering each other, killing each other. So now it has spread to every part of the world, that intolerance. The Master knew that it was ordained so far, the one purpose of his life, the purpose of removing intolerance and exclusiveness from the world as far as possible. He knew, moreover, that the world too was thirsting for this extremely beneficial truth. We shall make here an attempt to tell the reader how we arrived at the aforesaid conclusion. That true religion consisted in practice. That true religion consisted in practice, not in words, not in theories, was the belief of Sri Ramakrishna from his childhood. Please note this point. True religion consisted in practice and not in words, not for quoting, not for just lecturing, but true religion consisted in practice, not in words, was the belief of Sri Ramakrishna from his childhood. Again, he was feeling from time to time, during his sadhana, spiritual practices, that very often after he had realized perfection, that the powers earned by long practice could be actually imparted to others or passed on to them. We have already indicated this conviction of his here and there in many places. On many occasions in his life till then, the Master also got the proof that the Divine Mother, by her grace, had accumulated that power abundantly in him, that is Sri Ramakrishna. She had used that power as the instrument with which to bestow her grace on particular persons like Mathur, Girish Chandra Ghosh, and others. Consequently, till now, Sri Ramakrishna's conviction in respect of this power of his was that it was limited to the bestowal of Mother's grace on a few blessed individuals, making his body and mind the instrument for the same. He could not understand how or when she would bestow the grace of hers, nor did the Master's mind unhesitatingly dependent as it were on the Divine Mother, like that of a child on its mother, make any effort to understand it, but never had the worldwide implication of his spiritual power. The idea of spreading the spiritual message all over the country and flooding the world with a tidal wave of spirituality ever occurred to his mind, even in dream till then. Now, However, he began to feel in his heart of hearts that the Divine Mother had already started her divine sport in this respect through his body and mind, through that personality called Sri Ramakrishna. Though he had a feeling like that, he had no idea as to the means by which it was to be achieved, what the Divine Mother would make him do, or where she would take him for this achievement. He was, however, forever the child of the Divine Mother, and he knew only this: the mother is mine, and I am the mother's. No desire whatever except the mother's arose in his mind. Only one desire could probably be called his own. What was that one desire of Sri Ramakrishna, probably which could be called as his own? It was the desire to know the mother. It was the desire to know the mother because he believed mother or the divine highest divinity, Parabrahma Swarupa, he was seeing that as mother. So therefore, he wanted to know God in the highest sense. Here he's calling her as the mother. So that was the only desire he had. And what is that desire? To know that divine mother or God in various forms and through various paths. He wanted to, the only desire in his mind was to know God in various forms and in various ways in which the God has expressed himself. So that was the only desire. He had no other desire. He was the child of the Divine Mother. And he knew only this: the mother is mine, I am the mother's. No desire, whatever except the Divine Mother's arose in his mind. Only one desire could probably be called his own. And what was that one desire of Sri Ramakrishna? It was the desire to know God in various forms and through various paths. It was the desire to know that Divine Mother in various forms and through various paths. But Mother herself had made it very clear to him earlier that it was she who had raised that desire in his mind. The Divine Mother herself had made it very clear to him earlier that it was she who had raised that desire in his mind. Therefore, when this new experience regarding a spiritual mission occurred to his mind, the child of the Divine Mother that he was, he looked to her alone for guidance in an attitude of absolute dependence. And the Divine Mother continued to play with him as before. From his desire to spend the rest of his life in Vrindavan, in the absorption of divine love in the holy company of Ganga Mata, when he had visited there to Vrindavan in his pilgrimage, we can clearly understand that though vague ideas of spiritual mission were dawning on his mind, he had not the least intention, even then, to assume the position of a spiritual teacher, like the common run of the gurus and prophets who take up such roles under the influence of egotism. We cannot grasp or understand even a fraction of Sri Ramakrishna's lifelong attitude. Mother does her own work. Who am I to work for the world and teach humanity? But it was this very attitude that made him the wonderful instrument of Divine Mother's work. It was this very attitude that made it possible for him to remain in that high state of bhavamukha incessantly, in touch with both God and this world. It was this very attitude that led to the wonderful manifestation of the Guru mood in his mind, the spiritual teacher, or rather made him the very embodiment of that mood. So it was not that mood, but it was the embodiment of that mood. So long, Sri Ramakrishna used to lose himself when that power welled up in him. and he could detect and understand what happened through the instrumentality of his body and mind, only after the work had been accomplished. But now his body and mind got accustomed to contain and manifest that power without a break, in an easy and natural manner. And he was always established, in spite of himself, in the position of the true spiritual teacher. Before that time, the normal state of Sri Ramakrishna's mind was that of a humble aspirant or of a child. He then remained much longer in that mood, and the manifestation of the power as the Guru in him were few and far between. But now it was just the opposite. He remained much longer in the mode of the Guru, and the manifestation of the humble attitude of an aspirant or of a child was correspondingly brief. Now it was absolutely impossible for the mind of Sri Ramakrishna to assume the position of a spiritual teacher under the influence of egoism, that I am the Guru, I am going to teach. Time and again, we got the proof of it in the boyish quarrels of Sri Ramakrishna and Bhavamukha with the Divine Mother. Used to quarrel in a boyish way with the Divine Mother. Attracted by the manifestation of spirituality in Sri Ramakrishna, big crowds gathered at Dakshineshwar like swarms of bees attracted by the perfume of the full-blown 100-petal lotus. In those times, when we went to see Sri Ramakrishna one day, we found him speaking with Divine Mother. These people could see only Master talking to Divine Mother. They couldn't see the Divine Mother. But what was Sri Ramakrishna talking and quarreling like a boy in his boyish attitude towards Divine Mother? So in those times when we went to see Master one day, we found him speaking with the Divine Mother from the state of Bhavamukha. He said, "What art thou doing, Mother? Shouldn't thou bring crowds of people like this? Shouldst thou bring crowds of people like that? I find no time to bathe. I'd find no time to have my meals. If you bring so many people to me." So he's talking, grumbling with Mother. "Mother, what art thou doing? Shouldst thou bring crowds of people like this, so many people? I find no time to bathe. I have no time to take my meal." That was in the very early stage of his fatal disease, and Sri Ramakrishna was then suffering from the pain in his throat. So he said, referring to the condition of his body, "Mother, this body is nothing but a broken drum. If you play on this so much, then this drum will collapse. Mother, it is nothing but a broken drum. This body of mine is a broken drum. And if you play on this drum, broken drum so much, it will get perforated any day. What wilt thou do then? If the drum is broken or perforated, then you can't play on it. What will you do then? Don't play so much on this drum, Mother." On another occasion, we were sitting beside him at Dakshineshwar. It was the month of October of the year 1884. The news of the illness of Pratap, Hasra's mother, had come, and Sri Ramakrishna had persuaded him to go home to serve his mother. We were present on that occasion also. News came the day that Pratap had gone to Vaidyanath instead of going home to serve the mother. The master felt a little annoyed at that news because he considered serving mother as the highest spiritual sadhana. Serving father and mother was paramount in his mind. So he would inspire everybody to go and serve the mother. Now this Hazara, Pratap Hazara, was a hypocrite, was staying there in Dakshineshwar. He lost his job, he lost his money, he had a lot of debt. So to escape from the debtors and the loan givers, he came away running and stayed in Dakshineshwar. And Ramakrishna has kept him there. Ramakrishna kept him there to show the hypocrisy, to show that character which is in all of us, to some extent so that we can bring out that character which is within us and we can purify ourselves. So now, instead of going to serve the mother who was sick, he ran away to Vaidyanath. The master felt a little annoyed at that news. After we had a short talk on this and that, he asked us to sing a song, and he was in ecstasy a little afterwards. On this occasion also, Sri Ramakrishna, in that ecstatic mood, began to quarrel with the Divine Mother of the universe like a little boy. He said to the Divine Mother, "Mother, why dost thou bring such worthless and wayward people here like Hazra? Why do you bring such people here?" After a little silence, maybe he was hearing the words of the Divine Mother from the other side. Then he told, "I cannot do so much. Let there be at the most 1/4 or so of the seer of water in 1 seer of milk." Okay, now when you are giving me the task of purifying the milk, that is the people who come here, if you mix so much of water, 50-50, then how much of burning I have to do to remove that water and make it thick milk? So at least you can mix 1/4, not so much of water in the milk for me to do. The work will be too much. On this occasion also, Sri Ramakrishna, in an ecstatic mood, began to quarrel in a boyish way with the Mother of the universe. Like a little boy, he said, "Why, Mother, dost thou bring such a worthless and wayward people here?" After a little silence, maybe he was hearing the words of Divine Mother, "I cannot do so much work. Let there be at the most 1/4 or so of the seer of water to 1 seer of the milk." But now it is not so. There are 5 seers of water to 1 seer of milk. My eyes are burning with smoke as I continue pushing the fuel into the fire, rectifying them, giving them spiritual teachings, and then bringing up to the higher things. You have got so much of impurity, worthless people, that I have to do so much of work. My eyes are burning with smoke as I continue pushing the fuel into the fire. If thou likest, deal with them. Personally, I cannot do so much. You do it. Personally, you go and do. I can't do. If thou likest, deal with those worthless people. Personally, I can't do so much pushing of fuel into the fire. Don't bring such worthless people anymore. Overwhelmed with awe and astonishment, all of us who were looking, watching Sri Ramakrishna, we sat still thinking as to whom Sri Ramakrishna was referring in his talk with the Divine Mother, and how unfortunate that person was. Such quarrels arose daily between the Divine Mother and Sri Ramakrishna, which showed that Sri Ramakrishna asked the mother every day to take back from him the position of the teacher. He didn't want the Guru Giri. He didn't want to become a teacher. So he was quarreling with Divine Mother to take back that position as a Guru. Asked the mother every day to take back from him the position of the teacher, which he regarded as totally worthless. Though other yearn for it, other commonality, the common people who have realized even a little, they yearn for becoming Guru and increase the number of disciples and do that Guru Giri. Because on account of the attendant honor, you get so much of honor, you get so much of respect. So people yearn for it. But on the contrary, Sri Ramakrishna is fighting with Mother to remove that position. Thus did the Universal Mother, the divine will of the whole universe. The Universal Mother is nothing but the Ichcha Shakti, the divine will, in her inscrutable play, make the master have extraordinary and unprecedented experiences throughout his life. She created in him such an abundance of highly liberal spiritual ideas as she had never done before in any other guru, teacher, or incarnation. Along with this fact, she showed him how much spiritual power she had accumulated in him, and how, as a blessing to humanity, she had made of him a wonderful instrument for imparting that power to others. The master was amazed to see an utter lack of spirituality in the world outside, and through mother's grace, an accumulation of extraordinary spiritual power within himself for the removal of that want. He could not fail to understand that in this age, Kali Yuga, the mother had once more taken to the battlefield, so that in those yuga, the mother, Kali, divine mother, had taken to the battlefield to kill the demons, to kill the bad ones. But now, once again, Sri Ramakrishna could understand in this Kali Yuga, the mother had once more taken to the battlefield for killing the indomitable Rakta Bijasura, the demon of delusion produced by ignorance. So she wanted to kill the demon of ignorance. So she had again come to the battlefield, and that was through the personality of Sri Ramakrishna to spread the knowledge, so that the people in the world might again be blessed to witness that play of compassion welling up from her, and in joy and gratitude sing Alleluia to her, the arbiter of destinies of the innumerable universe, the possessor of infinite auspicious qualities. Just as an excess of heat generates clouds, waning is followed by waxing, and prosperity comes on the trail of adversity. So, by again going through what was Sri Ramakrishna's goal, how Divine Mother is using Sri Ramakrishna to spread her ideas. Thus did the Universe Mother, the Divine Will. Who is she? Who is the Divine Mother? It is the will of all the will, whatever will we have. It's not the will for our property, but our will of the mind. So Divine Mother is addressed as the divine will in her inscrutable play, made Sri Ramakrishna have an extraordinary and unprecedented experiences throughout his life. She created in him such an abundance of highly liberal spiritual ideas as she had never done before in any other great spiritual teachers or incarnation. Along with this fact, she showed him how much spiritual power she had accumulated in him, and how, as a blessing to humanity, she had made of him a wonderful instrument for imparting that power to others. Sri Ramakrishna was amazed to see an utter lack of spirituality in the outside world, and through Divine Mother's grace, an accumulation of extraordinary spiritual power within him for the removal of that want. So we will conclude for today's discussion here, and we will continue the same discussion, that is next Thursday. Now we will dedicate our time for question and answer. If you have any questions, any doubts on today's discussion, you can ask. There is one question from the YouTube. We are the children of Thakur, so we should have the faith that Thakur Ma will take care of all of us in need of crisis. Is the reality, is it not, Maharaj? So a real devotee, we should not be anxious. Yeah, that is true. If you have faith, then definitely they will take care of you. So have faith and continue to do the sadhana, whatever your guru has given. They will definitely take care of you. As Lord Krishna himself has promised in Bhagavad Gita, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam mahamyaham. If anybody has intense faith in me, Ananyaha chintayanto mam, you are constantly thinking of God, then I will not only take care of their kshema, yoga, but also kshema. Not only of the spiritual needs, even of the worldly needs, everything I'll take care of. So Krishna has promised, the Lord has promised. So you have faith in Thakur Ma, They will take care of all our needs, whatever crisis and everything. Faith is important. Yeah. Any other questions?
Pranam Maharaj.
Yes, Madhusudan, please tell.
Yeah. So, what is this concept of the desire to know the mother, Maharaj? So, in the physical plane, we don't have any such desire to know our own mothers. So, what is this concept of this desire of Ramakrishna Paramahams to know the mother? That was the only desire.
First of all, you should know that God is infinite, God is formless, God is attributeless. You cannot know. So, to know God, God comes down to us in different ways and different ideals. So, you can think of God as Father, you can think of God as Mother, you can think of God as Brother. So, there are so many ways by which you can approach God. But Ramakrishna chose the purest of the path to approach God as Mother. So it is not the biological mother, but through that he approached that relationship with the God, with the Parabrahma Swarupa. The Parabrahma Swarupa itself manifested Sri Ramakrishna as mother. So here, mother is God. That's why I mentioned that again and again while telling about the divine mother. It is the God, it is the divine will. So the divine will of the Parabrahma created this universe. So the divine will is worshipped as the Shakti, mother, the will, Icha Shakti Swarupini. In Lalita Sahasranama it is shown Icha Shakti, Dana Shakti, Icha Shakti, Kriya Shakti. So that's the Icha Shakti, the will, the divine will is worshipped as mother. So it's God alone. But for the purpose of Vyavahara, suppose if you tell Nirakara, Nirguna, infinity, you can't understand anything. How will you do the Vyavahara? How will you understand? So now, for Ramakrishna, he approached as mother. That's all, the same God. So he wants to know God, the manifestation of God in different forms, in different paths. The same God has taken different forms, so many 330 million gods in Hinduism, maybe thousands and millions paths, different cults, different means by which you can approach God. That is only in Hinduism, and in outside world, so many other different paths. So Ramakrishna had the desire to know Divine Mother or God manifested in different forms and see what it would lead to. Where will it go when you follow all these paths? That was his desire. That's all. To know God in different ways. And he found that it leads to the same one principle, formless, attributeless, infinite God. Is it clear, Madhu?
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
Any other questions? Any other doubts? Okay, then we can conclude with the prayer. Om Priyatam Pundarikakshaha Sarvayagneshwaro Harihi Tasmin Tushte Jagat Tushtam Predite Preditam Jagat Harihi Om Tatsat Shri Ramakrishna Pranamastu. Namaste. Om Namo Narayana.